YouTube, today we're going to go over the Aerodactyl team that I use for back-to-back battles. Let's get started and roll the episode. So why Aerodactyl? Aerodactyl is a cool Pokemon that I always enjoyed back in the anime in the first season to the competitive scene where I used it back in 2014 and its Mega Evolution for fun back in 2015 and beyond. I really do think Aerodactyl is a cool Pokemon, however it's really hard to use and find a good role for it, especially with Regieleki being such a common Pokemon, making Aerodactyl really hard to use. However, I ended up finding a team that I ended up facing on ladder where I really did see their Aerodactyl really shine in that game. And I thought, okay, this is actually a pretty interesting concept. Let me play around with it. And that is what led me to re-explore Aerodactyl and its options. So how was the team formed? Well, it started off when I fought this player on Stadium Ladder and they had the Aerodactyl Solgaleo. And I thought, oh, Choice Scarf Aerodactyl. Now that was interesting to me. And then I kind of had this little enlightenment that it just outsped Regieleki. And that was the main problem of why I wouldn't use Aerodactyl in the first place. So even though it can have Tailwind and other setups, felt like, ooh, maybe this is definitely worth a shot here. So I ended up going with the Choice Scarf Aerodactyl and I want to experiment it with Solgaleo. And it made a lot of sense too, because Solgaleo, one of its worst enemies is going to be that Charizard, and it is going to outspeed you, go for a Wildfire, usually Oko your Solgaleo. So Aerodactyl with the Stone Edge can threaten the knockout onto the Charizard potentially, and I felt like it was definitely going to be worth it here. So I started off with the Aerodactyl Solgaleo core, and then thought, you know, this is going to be probably really similar to that Metagross team with the Bulldoze. It's just really comfortable here. Let's see what other Pokemon I can really add on. And then the next Pokemon I added was going to be the Fire type for another Bulldoze method in case I can't go Aerodactyl. Then it really just depends. There'll be matchups I just don't want Aerodactyl in, and I'll probably want a bulkier Bulldoze Pokemon in general. I also like having the Fire typing, so it was between Entei and Arcanine. I just like Intimidate more, and I felt like, yes, I could bring Entei, but Entei might discourage them from bringing Charizard, which I actually do want them to bring, just because of the fact that I do want to hit them with the Stone Edge from Aerodactyl. And with the Stone Edge on Entei, you have to win a speed tie as well, which I'm not very comfortable with. Entei does allow you to outspeed the Urshifus though, which is a big plus, but since I'm usually going with the Aerodactyl mode in most cases against the Urshifus, I felt like, you know, it probably wasn't worth it. So I felt like I could fit in more room with the Intimidate on the Arcanine. Also really wanted a water type on this team as well, so I added Rotom-Wash, and Arcanine plus Rotom-Wash just very solid. Like the Intimidate Fire type plus Rotom-Wash, just really solid, and it really works. The water electric typing was really good, helps against Kyogre, helps against Yveltals, helps against Incineroars, Rotom Heat. Just a really good Pokemon to help out with Solgaleo, and Rotom-Wash just fits that core very nicely. Hydro Pump, Thunderbolt, Nasty Plot just end up being really great, allowing it to abuse the boost from the Solgaleo and then boost up the Rotom with the Nasty Plot, make it really hard to KO and dish out a lot of damage. Just ended up really working out well. Then the last two Pokemon were interesting. I felt like I needed something for Shadow Rider Calyrex, as I needed a backup for it, because Shadow Rider Calyrex is always a scary Pokemon to deal with. So I knew I wanted something for that, and I felt like Hydreigon made a lot of sense here. I wanted something for the Groudons too, and I like the idea of having Max Dragon to weaken the Groudons even further. I felt like having the fire coverage for like Venusaur was just really nice to have in general too, and having special fire coverage I felt like was really nice to have here for like Iron Defense, Ferrothorn, which could be a little bit of a pain, and that's why I ended up going with Hydreigon. And then the last Pokemon, it was between the grass types because I knew I wanted a grass type on this team, but I also wanted a fairy type on this team too, mainly because I felt like Dark Urshifu was just a bit of a headache in general. So having Rillaboom, I felt like kind of weakened the team to potential Urshifus, as well as like weakening my Earthquake wasn't exactly ideal at times because sometimes I'll want to click Earthquake with Solgaleo. So I thought, you know what, let's try Whimsicott out. Whimsicott was able to fulfill a Tailwind role, which was pretty nice because even though I do have a really speedy Aerodactyl, if they have Tailwind, especially with like fast Pokemon like Regieleki and Urshifu, it's a little bit hard to maneuver. So I feel like Whimsicott pretty much helped with that weakness. And even though I didn't have like grass coverage for like Kyogres and stuff, with the Rotom-Wash, with the Hydreigon, I felt like I was usually decent against a lot of the bulky water teams anyway. So sacrificing the grass coverage for the Tailwind, as well as the Dazzling Gleam for the Urshifu, for the Fairy type coverage, allows me to chip Yveltal as well, I felt like was pretty worth it in general. And that is how the 6 was formed. Alright, let's go over the items, the movesets, and the E-spreads of the team. We got Choice Scarf Aerodactyl, which was the star of the show, with Unnerve for its ability with dual Wingbeats, Crunch, Stone Edge, and Bulldoze. Man, I love this Pokemon. It was really hard to find a way to make it work though. However, I thought the Choice Scarf Aerodactyl was a pretty good way to bypass the Regieleki Urshifu leads, usually if it's Focus Sash on the Urshifu, and the Eleki is usually not Scarf, so I'm able to go for the Bulldoze, break that Sash on the Urshifu, and then Solgaleo can outspeed, go for the Steel Spike, and I am able to get a lot of momentum off that turn. I also really like Aerodactyl, the fact that it's a fast flying type, and Stone Edge is really threatening, even to Charizards. Through Dynamax, it's able to one-shot, and Aerodactyl with the Choice Scarf is able to outspeed a Dynamax Charizard at +1 speed, which is pretty nice there. So the Choice Scarf Aerodactyl was the choice here. Unnerve allows it to make sure that the opponent couldn't eat berries, which is pretty nice against specific like ground resist berries, for instance from like Incineroar, which is nice, or like healing berries in general, which I thought was really solid as well. And then having the moveset Dual Wing Beats, Crunch, Stone Edge, and Bulldoze. So Dual Wing Beats is that flying coverage. It helps against Urshifu. Unfortunately, it's not able to pick up the one shot, which is a bit unfortunate, but it does after a close combat drop, which is pretty nice for a revenge kill. And the coverage is really nice against Rillaboom and a few others. Crunch for the Shadow Rider Calyx, since Aerodactyl is able to outspeed Shadow Rider Calyx, and if they don't Dynamax, I am able to pick up the knockout with Crunch while outspeeding it. Stone Edge, this is the way I hit the Charizard through Dynamax and am able to one-shot. And this is a risky move, but it is a very rewarding move if you do land a Stone Edge against Charizard, which is really nice to have. And then Bulldoze for the speed control, and is a really important staple with the Solgaleo pairing. So the EV spread: 4 HP, 4 defense, 204 attack, 116 speed def, and 180 speed with a jolly nature. Now there were quite a few things that went into this Aerodactyl spread. I want to know where I want to outspeed. I knew I was going to at least outspeed Regieleki for sure. Then I was thinking about, do I outspeed max speed Venusaur if I go with a bit more of a higher speed stat, but I felt like it wasn't worth it, because when I looked at the team at the end process, I felt like most teams wouldn't bring Venusaur, or at least lead it right away against my team, and I don't think it's really that important because of the fact that I do have like Tailwind on the Whimsicott, I have Arcanine and Hydreigon. I felt like outspeeding Venusaur wasn't that really necessary, so I felt like I could use the leftover EVs elsewhere. And the EV spread I did have was outspeed Regieleki, and also outspeed a modest max speed Kyogre under Tailwind, which is pretty cool in case they are like a Torn Ogre variant where they are running modest Kyogre. It helps to have the Aerodactyl able to outspeed with the Bulldoze and slow down the Kyogre for Solgaleo, and you know, just get a bit of chip if necessary. And then the 116 speed def with 4 HP, this allows me to live a spread Astral Barrage from a Life Orb Timid Calyrex, which I thought, you know, if I have to live it, I think it's pretty good too. So I could Revenge KO with Crunch afterward if I switch in Aerodactyl, for instance. So that is the reason why. And then the 204 attack is the remaining, but it's pretty important for Stone Edge rolls into Charizard, which I am able to get the guaranteed knockout. It also allows me to knock out no bulk Calyrex Shadow Riders, which is pretty important as well. So next Pokemon we have is the Life Orb Hydreigon with Levitate for the ability with Draco Meteor, Dark Pulse, Fire Blast, and Protect. So I like Hydreigon. It was a very fun combination. Even with Aerodactyl back in 2014, I really did like using these Pokemon, and Hydreigon I thought is a pretty good staple, and I thought fit really well on the team. I wanted a dark type. I want something immune to Precipice Blades. And Hydreigon really fulfilled that role. It could really threaten like Groudon and Calyrex Shadow Rider, which is always a nice backup to have, and I thought it was just a very solid Pokemon for a lot of Sun teams. Even though it takes a lot from Charizard, it is able to resist a Wildfire at least, and usually take one Solar Power Boost attack and dish out some heavy damage. So yeah, I really do like Hydreigon as a Pokemon here. With the Life Orb, just hits hard. I like Draco Meteor and Dark Pulse for the coverage. I think Draco Meteor is better than Dragon Pulse, especially for the raw firepower, especially if I don't Dynamax Hydreigon, which I don't have to, as I like to Dynamax Solgaleo or Rotom a lot of the time. But if I do have to Dynamax Hydreigon, the extra power is still pretty nice. Fire Blast over Flamethrower, I felt like maybe this was unnecessary, but I just wanted Fire Blast for like even more power in general. I felt like it was pretty good against maybe some Venusaurs if they're weakened in the sun through Dynamax and a few other things. So yeah, I just like having extra power with Fire Blast, but I felt like Flamethrower was a little bit too weak. So yeah, I just ended up having more firepower with Fire Blast, and I felt like, yeah, Flamethrower could have worked on the team for sure. I didn't have too much time to experiment with, and I did think that Fire Blast was the better option at the time, so that's why I chose Fire Blast. I just want extra power to hit like Zacians and some other things as well, like the Venusaur through Dynamax. So that's the reason why I ran Fire Blast. Even with the little bit shaky accuracy, it's not as bad as compared to like Thunder or Blizzard, so it's not too bad, and I think it was an okay option. I think this could be replaced though with Flamethrower for accuracy convenience stuff. EV spread is very simple, just 4 HP, 252 special attack, and 252 speed with a modest nature. This is just very simple. If I do get an airstream off of Aerodactyl, for instance, I am able to outspeed the Shadow Rider Calyrexes as well as the Zacians, which is pretty nice. It just hits pretty hard. I felt like no reason to really add Timid, because like Timid maybe could outspeed a few things, maybe like Landorus, but usually I go Solgaleo or Rotom against the Landorus anyway. So I felt like it wasn't that big of a deal just to go with max special attack modest. I really want Hydreigon to do as much damage as possible and to outspeed Groudon and really threaten it with those Draco Meteors or Max Dragon. So that's the reason why I just ended up going with Max, and I felt like, yes, I could probably optimize the EV spread more, maybe add a bit more bulk, because that would have been nice. But overall, Hydreigon was just supposed to hit pretty hard, and with the Life Orb draining its HP away, I didn't feel like I needed that initial bulk anyway. So that's the reason why I just ended up going with max special attack and max speed. So next Pokemon we have is Focus Sash Whimsicott with Prankster for the ability with Dazzling Gleam, Tailwind, Taunt, and Protect. Now, I had a few grass types that I was in mind for this team. I also knew I wanted a fairy type on this team somewhere, just so I could get a little bit of more pressure against the Yveltal potentially. And I wasn't sure. I had Rillaboom on the team. I just wasn't feeling it. It also weakened the power of my Solgaleo's Earthquake after Dynamax was over. Even though it like kind of helped my Solgaleo, it was also hurting it at the same time. So I didn't really like Rillaboom too much. But like I never even went for the grass move anyway, because I had Rotom-Wash and Hydreigon, which are pretty good Pokemon against the water types in general anyway. So I felt like it wasn't necessary. So I ended up just adding Whimsicott because it had that fairy coverage that I wanted, having the grass typing as well as Tailwind, which is really nice because it helps against opposing Tailwind Pokemon, which I think is really cool on the team. So yeah, I ended up adding Whimsicott to the teams. With the Prankster and Focus Sash, I could have went Eject Button, I could have went like any other items, but since I had the Focus Sash item open on the team, I felt like Eject Button Switcheroo, yes, I could technically do it with Aerodactyl, right? As they wouldn't maybe expected. I felt like I'd rather just have more consistency with that Focus Sash item, and I kind of want to usually go for Taunt. I had an idea of just going for Taunt to prevent opposing Tailwinds and then Tailwind up myself, so I felt like having the Focus Sash item would help that more. And yeah, I just ended up going with that. Dazzling Gleam, Tailwind, Taunt, and Protect. Dazzling Gleam because all I need is chip damage with Whimsicott. It's not meant for KO, it's just for chip, specifically into Dark Urshifu, which is pretty important I think as well. So out of the moves I knew that I wanted on Whimsicott, it was going to be Dazzling Gleam, Tailwind, and Protect. I wasn't sure about the last move. I considered Helping Hand, I considered the Switcheroo with the Eject Button, I considered Fake Tears with Hydreigon, Rotom-Wash. I also considered some other options like Sunny Day potentially. But overall, I wasn't too sure, and I felt like Taunt was pretty nice just because of the fact that my Trick Room matchup isn't exactly solid. My Trick Room matchup's usually just trying to stall out Trick Room as quick as possible, or just trying to knock out with heavy pressure right away using like Aerodactyl, Solgaleo, rocking the Policy, for instance. That's usually the way I would probably just brute force your Trick Room, or I have to defensively stall it out. So just having Taunt as a backup I felt like was pretty nice to have just in general, and helped out against like Porygon 2 and some other stuff, which maybe I wouldn't be able to one-shot immediately. So I felt like that was a decent option, and I felt like it did pay off quite immensely. I do think Whimsicott has a bunch of options though, so it really just depends, but I did think this set was pretty consistent overall, and I didn't have to rely on the Switcheroo set, and I felt like having the Focus Sash item really just saved Whimsicott a lot of times, and having that Protect option to block fake outs in order to preserve my Focus Sash, which I felt like was really nice. And then the EV spread is just very simple here, with a max HP and max speed set with 4 special attack. As I mentioned before, the Whimsicott is mainly just to spread some chip damage, specifically for the Dark Urshifu. I don't really need special attack at all, and if I'm able to live a couple of repetitive attacks like Electros from Eliki, take it a little bit better, Rock Slides in general, I felt like just having the max HP is just more worth it than having a little bit more extra damage with special attack from Dazzling Gleam, which shouldn't really come too much into play because usually I'm just trying to brute force with Solgaleo or Hydreigon anyway. Alright, next Pokemon we have is the Solgaleo, the star of the show next to Aerodactyl for the Bulldoze strategy with Weakness Policy and Full Metal Body with Sunsteel Strike, Earthquake, Rock Slide, and Protect. Solgaleo, really cool Pokemon, a really big threat in this format, specifically with Weakness Policy and Dynamax, and the Full Metal Body is absolutely fantastic here with all the Intimidates, all the stat drops from max moves. Solgaleo is just a fantastic Pokemon, and it's really bulky and does a lot of damage out to the Weakness Policy boost. It's absolutely insane, especially when procced using Aerodactyl or Arcanine. I feel like it's just really hard to take down at times if you're not well prepared for it. So the Weakness Policy set, I think, just really complemented the team. Sunsteel Strike, of course, really powerful steel move and really complements Solgaleo. Earthquake, that is 40 max Quake special defense boost, which is always nice. Rock Slide specifically is just meant for like Charizards and Rotom Heats, which is pretty important, I feel like. And then having Protect in order to preserve Solgaleo. So the EV spread, we have a 220 speed, and the reason I ended up going with 220 speed with a Jolly Nature, just in general, is supposed to outspeed quite a few things with the Bulldoze combination from Aerodactyl. With the Aerodactyl Choice Scarf, I'm usually always able to get the Bulldoze off first. Then Solgaleo is able to outspeed afterward. I am able to outspeed the Shadow Rider, Calyrex, Zacian, and a lot of Pokemon just after the Bulldoze combination, and then just able to pick up the knockout usually with the max move, which is really nice. And the reason I went with a Jolly Nature and even with the Bulldoze speed creep is just because I still want to outspeed a Landorus variant, which I think is really important, and go for a Steel Spike before it can hit me off with like a Max Quake, especially if they have a Swords Dance out prior. So I really do like having that option of just outspeeding a Landorus variant before an attack, because if they Max Quake, I still outspeed and then I threaten the KO afterward with 2 max moves usually. And then I really do like having that situation. And if I was slower, it could be a little bit scary. So I really just like having the faster Solgaleo there. I like having a lot of attacking power. And then I like having a little bit of extra bulk just so I can be able to take attacks more comfortably, especially with the max Steel Spike boost and the max Quake boost. It's still a really just generally good Pokemon. Solgaleo already has a really good natural HP. It's really good. And then its defenses are pretty solid as well, especially with the boost. So I don't have to invest too much. So I'm able to invest more into its attack and speed, dish out a lot of damage, and still be pretty bulky in general. Next, we got Rotom-Wash with the Sitrus Berry, with Levitate for the ability, with Hydro Pump, Thunderbolt, Nasty Plot, and Protect. This is a good old Rotom-Wash set. This team is really similar to the Metagross Entei team that I used back in Series 9, and Rotom-Wash works fantastically as it can help against Rotom Heat, help against Incineroar, helps against Groudon potentially, and just does super well against a lot of Pokemon in the format. Water Electric typing is really nice on this team. I like the Water typing to help for the Fire types against Solgaleo, and just in general, just super solid. Electric move as well to hit the Kyogres, which is fantastic. The bulky waters can give Solgaleo a little bit of trouble, so having the Rotom-Wash was absolutely great on this team. Sitrus Berry set, of course, is pretty standard with the Hydro Pump, Thunderbolt, Nasty Plot, Protect. Just a very solid Rotom. I didn't feel like I needed a bulky Rotom. I felt like screens weren't necessary on this team at all, and I didn't really like the Wisp or the Eerie Impulse set. I feel like overall this Rotom set was just really comfortable to use. It's able to boost up and take advantage of the Solgaleos going for the Max Quake or Max Steel Spike to boost up its partner's defenses, and Rotom-Wash is able to take those defense boosts and then Nasty Plot up and becomes a real big threat afterward. EV spread wise, it's pretty much similar to the Rotom Heat I've been using before, but it just pretty much has the same principles. Max HP for the maximum bulk as its HP stats at the highest. You still want decent defenses because of the fact that you are going to be taking attacks, especially from like Zacians and stuff. Just having a bit of extra defense is pretty good. 36 Modest is just a comfortable nature. It gives me a +1 in the stat point and does good amount of damage outside of the Nasty Plot, and with the Nasty Plot it's still able to pick up the 2 shots or the 1 shot that it normally would get. 68 special defense to take on the special attacks, and then 52 speed. This allows me to outspeed Pokemon potentially such as the Calyrex Shadow Rider at +2 with the Tailwind, which is really nice to have. And yeah, that is just a pretty good Rotom set. It does fantastic. It's a bulky Pokemon. It's able to set up Nasty Plot usually, able to dish out a lot of damage as well. And fantastic typing, just really fit the team overall. Last Pokemon we have is the Figgy Berry Arcanine set with the Intimidate and Flare Blitz, Snarl, Bulldoze, and Protect. Now, I really like having Intimidate. It just feels so comfortable to have Intimidate. It really supports Hydreigon, Solgaleo, and Rotom-Wash, which is something Entei didn't really bring to the team, and I don't have screens, so I felt like I wanted some form of bulk. So I really like having that Intimidate, and I also think that just try out Arcanine once again, because it's a really good switch to Zacians, which I felt like is just really good to have here. So I do like trying out Arcanine in this format and see how it went, and it went pretty well. The Figgy Berry was a pretty nice item to have. Arcanine was able to usually consistently get the Figgy Berry proc, which was nice. Flare Blitz, Snarl, Bulldoze, Protect. Pretty standard to an Entei set. The reason I chose Arcanine, of course, again, for the Intimidate, Entei does have a few different roles that it does accomplish better, which is the fact that it is faster than every single Urshifu. With the base 100 speed, it can speed type Charizard and go for Stone Edge. And I did consider Entei at one point at the team, but since I had Aerodactyl for the Stone Edge to deal with the Charizards, and that's what I usually try to bring, and it might discourage them from bringing the Charizard because of the fact that Entei could be there and they might not want to deal with the Stone Edge or the Max Rock Fall. It made me think I want them to bring Charizard so Aerodactyl can potentially just like surprise them, since I bet they're not expecting the Stone Edge potentially. So yeah, that is the reason why I have the Aerodactyl. And then the Arcanine, it's so that I can bait out the Charizard potentially and then throw off like Stone Edges or like Rock Falls with the Solgaleo under a Tailwind from Whimsicott. And yeah, that's the main reason why I want them to actually bring Charizard in the matchup. And I felt like just to Intimidate again, it's just a good enough reason. Overall, I think it's pretty solid here as well. Intimidate is just a great ability, and it really does complement a lot of these Pokemon. So EV spread wise, very simple here with a 236 HP, 12 attack, 4 defense, 4 special defense, and 252 speed with Jolly Nature. I just want to go as fast of an Arcanine as possible to outspeed my Solgaleo, of course. And then yeah, that's basically the main reason, is to outspeed my Solgaleo, which is meant to outspeed the Landis variants, which is really nice. And yeah, Arcanine was just generally bulky Pokemon that was able to fire off a Snarl, usually able to outspeed a lot of Pokemon, get the Bulldoze off. And Flare Blitz was just pretty nice to have on this Pokemon, just because of the fact that if my Arcanine's a little bit out of the berry range, Flare Blitz can help out potentially and allow me to get into berry range and proc the berry, which is really solid. So I really do like the Arcanine set on the team. It can be experimented with Entei, but Intimidate was just so comfortable for me. And yeah, I just really do like Intimidate. So how to use the team and what are the common leads with it? Well, I would say this team really is about setup. Usually it's about setting up the weakness policy with Solgaleo, able to dish out a lot of damage, but otherwise you have a few other win conditions. Hydreigon is able to power through some certain teams. Having Rotom-Wash is really solid for the Nasty Plot setup, and it's easy to set up usually with the boost from Solgaleo or the Arcanine. And usually you have a end game of just dishing out a lot of damage, whether it's the Nasty Plot Rotom-Wash, whether it's the Hydreigon, whether it's the Aerodactyl, which even after setting up a Bulldoze, they usually don't even target the Aerodactyl. They're usually too busy focusing on the Solgaleo. And Aerodactyl is able to be switched out, preserved in the end game, and then dish out a lot of damage on their weakened Pokemon in order to win the game. And I have found that pretty handy in a lot of situations. So that is mainly how you're going to use the team. There are a lot of common leads that you have with the team. Solgaleo just fits well with any of these Pokemon right here, whether it's the Tailwind from Whimsicott for the setup, to end up just going straight for damage and boosting up your stats, potentially proccing the weakness possibly later in the game, whether it's setting up the Bulldoze immediately using Aerodactyl or Arcanine, depending on the situation. They have a fast mode that doesn't have Tailwind. Aerodactyl is still able to outspeed most of the time with Bulldoze, and really set up that Solgaleo and slow down the opponent for Solgaleo to just like follow up and KO with a +2 max move. Or Arcanine if it's a slower team and Arcanine's able to disrupt the Snarl and just set up a Bulldoze with Solgaleo. That's also another really solid option. Rotom-Wash is able to lead with Arcanine, of course. Arcanine is able to lead with Hydreigon. The Intimidate's really good for the special attackers, allows Rotom to set up potentially. And of course, Hydreigon just able to dish out a ton of damage immediately, while Arcanine usually helps with the Snarls and the Intimidate to prevent Hydreigon from taking too much damage. And then Whimsicott's able to lead in general, which is like Tailwind lead with anything, with either Aerodactyl, with Hydreigon, with Rotom-Wash, with Solgaleo as mentioned before, or Arcanine, depending on what you want to go for, whether it's just straight up damage, Aerodactyl to pick up a sneaky surprise KO immediately, Rotom-Wash, which can just threaten a lot of damage if you want to Dynamax or Nasty Plot immediately, or Arcanine for the Intimidate. There's so many different lead combinations with this team, and it really depends on what you want to set up for the end game and what you can do straight away, whether it's setting up Tail, whether it's setting up the weakness policy, whether it's setting up Nasty Plot, or just going straight for damage. This team's got it all. And that is going to be the end of the episode. I hope you all enjoyed learning about the Aerodactyl team and how it was formed. If you did enjoy it, please leave a like down below, leave a comment down below. It really does help out. And make sure you check out the videos with the Aerodactyl team. We had some crazy battles, and Aerodactyl was a very fun Pokemon to use. And if you want to try out the team yourself, you have 2 weeks to grab it with this rental code before it expires, but there is the pay spin available in the description down below. Thank you all for tuning in though. Have a great day, people, and until we battle again, I'll catch y'all later.